Hello, dear learner, welcome back. If this warmed your heart even a little, consider subscribing. This is Learn English Through Story. Watch until the end to see what happens. Because tonight's story opens with a quiet mystery that grows louder with every breath. A phone buzzed on the kitchen counter at 6:03 a.m. and Maya froze. The screen showed a missed call from unknown, but the log showed something impossible. The call was scheduled for tomorrow. The date glowed in cold blue numbers one day ahead, as if time itself had slipped and left a footprint on her screen. She touched the glass. It felt ordinary. Nothing else in the apartment felt ordinary at all. Outside, the city was just waking. Buses coughing to life. Bakery air warm with cinnamon. Inside, a clock on the wall had stopped at 11:11, both hands like raised fingers asking for a wish. Maya, a literature teacher who kept promises the way others kept keys, stood very still and listened. There was no message notification, no voicemail bubble, only that line in her call history, stamped with the future. Her first thought was simple, a glitch. Her second thought was sharp, her brother. 2 years earlier, Armin had loved to prank her with apps that shuffled time zones, changed alarms, flipped screens. He would have laughed at this, would have, if he hadn't disappeared one winter night, leaving behind a jacket on a chair and a promise to return. She pushed the thought down like a drawer that wouldn't quite close. The kettle clicked off. The apartment exhaled a white curl of steam. Maya poured hot water over tea leaves and watched them spin like dark birds. She reached for the phone again. Unknown. Tomorrow. 6:03, the exact minute she was standing in now. She placed the phone flat and whispered, "You're not real." But the line remained, thin and stubborn, a hair trapped under glass. On the walk to work, she took the long route past a river. The air was silver, the water wrinkled with wind. On the footbridge, a street violinist played a tune she couldn't place. Soft, hesitant, the way a person speaks when they are about to ask a hard question. Maya dropped a coin in the case. The violinist looked up with grateful eyes and said, "Your watch is fast." Maya glanced down. Her watch showed 7:11. The city bells answered, ringing 7 times, then one more unsure. She laughed politely and kept walking, but the bells followed her into the school building like footprints on wet tile. During first period, she asked her students to circle verbs of movement in a short story. Every action tells a secret, she said, chalk tapping the board. Watch how characters step, turn, or hesitate. A boy in the back raised his hand. Mrs. Z's way of movement? He was the kind of student who chewed pencil erasers into clouds. She smiled. Waiting moves a story even when feet don't. As she spoke, her phone trembled once in her pocket. No sound, only the memory of a vibration, like a ghost feeling. She pretended not to notice. At lunch, the faculty room smelled of coffee and copy paper. Mr. Halden from chemistry stirred sugar like he was conducting an orchestra. "You look pale, Maya." "Not sleeping." She shrugged. "Just a strange morning." He nodded sympathetically. Strange is a country where teachers live. He offered half a muffin. She broke it carefully, as if the crumbs might carry an answer. When she finally dared open her call history again, the line had changed. Not the time, not the date. Those remained tomorrow at 6:03. But now there was a small gray symbol next to it. A square speech bubble, the universal sign for a message. Maya's heartbeat stepped on a stair and missed the next. She tapped. The phone asked for a passcode. Then the voicemail folder unfurled like a curtain. There it was. One new message, stamped with tomorrow's date. She put the phone face down on the table, hands flat, breath going shallow. The room hummed with the white noise of vending machines and distant laughter. She counted to 10. She counted to 11 because of the clock at home. At 12, she lifted the phone and pressed play. Static first. The soft rain of old tape. Then a voice she knew by the shape of its silence before the first word came. Maya. It said, cracked and tender, like a door that had been closed too long. It was Armin. The night was unusually still. A hush had fallen over the small town, as though even the crickets dared not disturb the silence. In the corner of her dimly lit room, Clara sat by the wooden desk, her hands trembling around a yellowed envelope she discovered only hours before. It bore no address, no seal, only her name, written in ink so faded it seemed to belong to another century. Her heart pounded. She had almost thrown it aside, thinking it was nothing but an old scrap, yet something in the handwriting called to her, a familiarity she could not explain. With slow, careful fingers, she unfolded the brittle paper. The words inside were brief, but they struck her like thunder. If you want to know the truth about the night your father disappeared, follow the path behind the abandoned chapel at dawn. Come alone. She read the line again, then again, her mind racing. Her father, the wound of his sudden vanishing years ago, had never closed. The police had called it an accident, a misstep into the river. But Clara had never believed it. Too many questions lingered. Too many nights she had dreamed of his voice calling her name, of shadows moving where there should be none. The letter was unsigned. The handwriting was strange, elegant, and unfamiliar. And yet, her instincts whispered, whoever wrote it knew something, perhaps everything. Clara could hardly sleep that night. The candle burned down to its last flicker while she sat awake, staring at the words. Her thoughts tangled between fear and desperate hope. When dawn began to stretch its pale fingers across the sky, she rose quietly, pulling on her worn boots and shawl. She slipped outside into the morning chill. The chapel stood on the far edge of town, long abandoned, its windows broken, its walls draped in ivy. The path behind it was narrow, half hidden by weeds, winding into the forest like a serpent. Clara hesitated at the threshold. The trees loomed darkly, their branches whispering in the breeze, as though warning her to turn back. But she stepped forward. Each crunch of her boots on the gravel echoed too loudly in the silence. The path grew darker the deeper she went, until the light of dawn barely reached the forest floor. And then, there, ahead, a figure. Someone was waiting. A tall man stood near the roots of an old oak tree, his face shadowed by the brim of a hat. Clara's breath caught in her throat. He did not move at first, simply watching her approach. And when finally he spoke, his voice was low, deliberate, carrying both gravity and sorrow. "You came," he said. Clara clutched the letter tighter in her hand. "You wrote this?" The man nodded slowly. "And I know why you're here. You want the truth." Her pulse raced. Every instinct told her flee, but her feet remained rooted. She whispered, almost afraid of the answer, "Then tell me, what really happened to my father?" The man's eyes lifted, and for the first time she saw the glint of something familiar in his gaze, something that made her shiver. "The truth," he murmured, "is darker than you can imagine, and it begins with a promise your father once made, a promise he could not keep." The forest seemed to draw closer as the man's words sank into Clara's chest. A promise her father had made? The idea was foreign, chilling. Her father had been a kind man, simple, gentle, never one to deal in secrets. Or so she had always believed. Clara steadied her breath. "What promise?" she asked, her voice sharp with fear. The man's eyes flicked toward the trees, as if they, too, were listening. "Long before his disappearance, your father was involved with a group. They called themselves the Circle. On the surface, they were scholars, historians, collectors of knowledge. But beneath that mask, they searched for something far older, far more dangerous." Clara's heart stuttered. "Dangerous? My father was a teacher. Not what?" The man interrupted gently, but firmly. "Not a man with shadows hidden in his past? You think you knew him, but every man carries secrets, even from those he loves most." His words struck deep. Clara wanted to argue, but fragments of memory rose unbidden. Her father's late-night walks, the journals he locked away, the cryptic stories he once told her about oaths, debts, and guardianship. She had dismissed them as bedtime tales. Now they burned with new meaning. The man stepped closer, his boots sinking into the damp earth. "Your father swore to guard something, an object that many have hunted for centuries, something that should never fall into the wrong hands. The Circle believed it was buried near this town, and your father, he found it." Clara's breath hitched. "What was it?" The man's gaze darkened. "A key. Not to a chest, not to gold, but to a door that was never meant to be opened. A door to knowledge that bends a mind and corrupts the soul. He paused, his voice lowering to a whisper. Your father promised to keep it hidden, but promises are heavy things. And when he realized he could not carry the weight, he vanished into the night. The words twisted around her like smoke. She wanted to shout, to deny, to demand proof. Instead, she whispered, You're telling me my father didn't drown? The man's lips tightened. No, he ran. He ran because the circle wanted a key, and he feared they would come for you. Clara's knees nearly gave way. The earth beneath her felt unsteady, the trees spinning in her vision. Her father's absence, years of grief, suddenly cracked open into a vast, terrifying possibility. He hadn't left her because he was gone. He had left her because he was alive. Tears pricked at her eyes. If he's alive, where is he? The man's expression softened, a flicker of pity crossing his face. That is the question that has haunted many, but answers have a price. Clara tightened her grip on the letter. Then I'll pay it. The man studied her, then slowly reached into his coat. He pulled out a small, weathered notebook bound with string. Its cover was stained, its corners frayed. Clara's heart stopped. The handwriting etched on the front was unmistakable. It was her father's. The man extended it toward her. This is all he left behind. Inside, you may find the path he walked, and perhaps where it leads. But be warned, Clara, once you open it, you will no longer be the same. Her fingers shook as they hovered above the notebook. The forest around her seemed to fade into silence, waiting for a choice. And then she touched it. The man's voice broke the stillness, a whisper heavy with finality. Your father's story did not end the night he disappeared. It began. Clara cradled the notebook as though it might vanish if she held it too tightly. The leather was cracked, the string fragile, yet the weight of it seemed greater than stone. Her father's handwriting on the cover stirred something raw inside her chest. The man in the hat stepped back, folding his arms. Once you open it, you'll see him as he truly was. Not only a father, but a guardian. And guardians never live easy lives. Clara hesitated. The trees swayed in the early wind, their branches like claws urging her to act. With trembling hands, she untied the string. The notebook fell open to the first page. The ink was faded, but legible. Her father's handwriting curved across the paper. If you are reading this, then I have failed to return. Forgive me, Clara. The circle has awoken, and the key is no longer safe. I could not protect you if I stayed. All I can give you now are truths written in shadows. Clara's lips parted, but no sound came. She flipped to the next page. A sketch of a symbol stared back at her, a circle divided by 3 lines, with an eye at its center. Beneath it, her father had written, Trust no one who bears this mark. They are sworn to the circle's hunger. Her hands trembled harder. She turned another page. Lists of names. Some were crossed out, others circled in red. Beside one name, Elijah Thorne, was a note, the betrayer. Clara looked up at the stranger. Do you know this name? The man's jaw tightened. Yes, he was once your father's closest ally. But loyalty, like glass, shatters easily. She read on, the words cutting deeper with every line. Her father described nights spent burying relics, days spent watching shadows and mirrors, and a final entry that made her throat close. They will come for Clara if they cannot find me. Hide her from the chapel to the river. Tell her nothing. Better she hate me than fall into their grasp. Tears blurred the ink. She pressed her palm against the page as if she could touch the hand that had written it. All those years of silence, of wondering why he left, and the truth was here, tangled in fear and sacrifice. The man spoke again, his voice steady but grave. Do you see now? Your father did not abandon you. He carried a burden too heavy, and in protecting you, he disappeared into its darkness. Clara swallowed hard. Then where is he? Alive or dead? The man's gaze was unreadable. That depends on how much of the circle's grip remains. If Elijah has the key, your father may already be... He stopped himself. Clara snapped the notebook shut. No, don't finish that. He's alive. He has to be. The man studied her defiance, then gave the faintest nod. If you truly believe that, then you must follow the trail in those pages. It will not be safe. The circle watches everything. But sometimes faith is the sharpest weapon. From the shadows of the trees, a crow cawed, black wings flashing against the pale sky. Clara's resolve hardened. She tied the notebook closed again and slipped it into her satchel. "Then show me where to start," she said. The man's lips curved into the faintest, sorrowful smile. "We begin where promises are broken and fires never die." Clara frowned. What does that mean? But before he could answer, the forest seemed to shiver with sound. Footsteps, many of them, closing in fast. The man's face turned cold. Too late. They found us. The forest erupted. Branches cracked beneath hurried boots. Voices murmured low and sharp in a language Clara did not recognize. The man in the hat, her only fragile tether to answers, tense like a bowstring. "They're closer than I thought," he whispered. His eyes darted toward Clara. "Listen to me. When I say run, you run. Do not stop. Do not look back." Clara's pulse hammered in her ears. She clutched the satchel against her chest, the notebook inside pressing like a heartbeat of its own. "Who are they?" she breathed. The man's jaw tightened. "The Circle's hounds. They hunt what your father once guarded, and now they hunt you." Before Clara could respond, the undergrowth ahead burst open. 3 figures stepped into view, cloaked in black, their faces obscured by masks etched with the same symbol her father had drawn in his notebook. The circle with the eye at its center. The leader raised a hand, and the other 2 stopped, silent as shadows. His voice slid through the air, smooth and venomous. "Give us the book, girl. It does not belong to you." Clara's stomach dropped. Her grip on the satchel tightened. She shook her head, her voice breaking but steady enough. "It was my father's. You have no right." The man beside her shifted, stepping half in front of her. "You'll have to go through me first." A chuckle slipped from behind the leader's mask. Always the loyal dog, still guarding the dead man's child. But loyalty won't save you now. What happened next blurred in fire and thunder. One of the masked figures lunged, a blade flashing silver. The man in the hat met him with sudden, startling force. He moved like someone who had fought these battles before, each strike sharp, each step precise. Metal clashed against metal, sparks spitting into the dim light. "Run!" he barked over his shoulder. But Clara's legs refused. She was rooted, torn between terror and the knowledge that if she fled now, she might never learn the truth about her father. She stumbled backward, her heel catching on a root, nearly falling. The leader advanced toward her, unhurried, confident. "Your father's sins have found you, Clara. Do not make them yours." Hand over the notebook. Her breath came in ragged bursts. She thought of her father's handwriting, of the plea in his words. "Forgive me, Clara." She thought of nights spent as a child staring at the door, waiting for him to return. And then, to her own surprise, she drew herself up and shouted, "No!" The leader paused, his masked head tilting. So stubborn, just like him. He reached into his cloak, pulling free a chain that glowed faintly, as if burning with cold fire. Before he could strike, the man in the hat slammed into him, forcing him back. "Go!" he shouted again, his voice fierce. This time Clara obeyed. She turned and ran, the forest blurring as branches whipped her face, her lungs screaming for air. Behind her, she heard steel clash, voices curse, the world tearing itself apart in violence. She didn't dare look back. She only clutched the satchel and ran until her legs nearly collapsed beneath her. Finally, when the sounds of battle faded into the distance, Clara stumbled into a clearing. The morning sun had climbed higher, spilling gold across the grass. She fell to her knees, breath ragged, the notebook pressed against her heart. For a long moment, she stayed there, trembling. Then she opened the satchel, pulled the notebook free, and whispered to the silent pages, "Father, what have you left me in the middle of?" And on the very next page, she hadn't noticed before, there was a map. The page smelled faintly of smoke and old ink. Clara traced the lines with her fingertip. rivers twisting like veins, mountains rising in jagged sketches, a chapel marked in faded charcoal, the same abandoned chapel she just left. From there, a path stretched east, winding into unknown terrain. At the edge of the map, in her father's hand, a single word was written, Ashbourne. Clara frowned. She had heard the name only once, long ago, in one of her father's half-whispered stories told by the fire, a town swallowed by time, where people claimed the soil remembered secrets. She had thought it nothing more than folklore, yet here it was, etched in her father's hand, the end of the trail. The wind stirred, rattling the leaves around her. She folded the map carefully and tucked it back into the notebook. But a single question clawed at her. Where was the man in the hat? Was he alive, still fighting? Or had the circle's hounds taken him? The silence of the forest gave no answer. Clara pushed herself to her feet, dirt clinging to her palms. Every instinct screamed to go back, to search for him. But her father's words pressed in her mind. Hide her. Tell her nothing. Better she hate me than fall into their grasp. The path forward was all she had now. By midday, she had reached the river that curved like a silver blade through the valley. The current whispered against the stones, carrying with it the smell of moss and earth. She sat at the bank, unwrapped a piece of bread from her satchel, and forced herself to eat. Her body needed strength, though her stomach twisted with unease. While she rested, her eyes caught something glinting beneath the water. At first she thought a trick of sunlight, but then she saw it, metal, half buried in the riverbed. Carefully, she stepped into the cold water, her boots sinking in the mud. She pulled it free, a locket. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a faded photograph. Her father, younger, standing beside another man whose face was scratched out violently. Beneath the photo lay a fragment of paper, folded small. She drew it out, heart pounding. It bore 3 words hurriedly scrawled. Trust the silence. Clara stared, her thoughts reeling. What did it mean? And why had it been left here, hidden in the river's current? As she tucked the locket into her satchel, a sound cracked the air behind her. Footsteps. Clara froze. Slowly she turned. A boy stood at the edge of the river, no older than 16, his clothes ragged, his eyes wary but bright. In his hands he held a staff carved with strange markings. "You shouldn't be here," he said softly, though his voice carried a weight far older than his years. "They'll find you again." Clara's pulse quickened. "Who are you?" The boy tilted his head, studying her as though measuring her soul. "Someone who owes your father a debt." Her chest tightened. "You knew him?" The boy nodded once. "And if you want to survive, you must come with me. Ashbourne is not a place you can reach alone." The wind rose, scattering leaves across the water. Clara clutched the satchel tighter. The map burned in her memory, the locket heavy in her palm. She took a step toward him, her voice trembling but resolute. "Then lead the way." The boy's lips curved faintly, almost sadly. "So it begins." The boy led Clara along a narrow trail that twisted deeper into the valley. His pace was steady, silent, almost too silent, as though he had walked this path 1,000 times. The markings on his staff caught the fading sunlight, symbols carved with care, worn smooth by years of use. Clara followed, her satchel heavy at her side, the notebook pressing against her hip like a hidden heartbeat. For a while neither spoke. The forest around them grew denser, the air thick with the scent of pine and damp earth. Finally, Clara broke the silence. "You said you owe my father a debt. What did you mean?" The boy glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "He saved me, years ago when the circle tried to take me." Clara frowned. "Take you? Why?" The boy tapped his staff lightly against the ground, his eyes fixed ahead. "Because of what I can hear." Her brow furrowed. "Here." He stopped suddenly and motioned for her to listen. At first, Clara heard nothing but the whisper of leaves. Then, slowly, she realized the silence itself was alive. Beneath it, like threads tugging at the edges of her mind, faint murmurs curled and vanished. Voices hidden in the hush. She shivered. "What is that?" "The silence," the boy said simply. "Your father told me once. Trust the silence. for carries truths no words dare hold. That's why the circle wants me. They believe I can hear the locations of what they seek. Relics, keys, secrets. Clara's grip tightened on her satchel. The fragment from the locket, the words "trust the silence," burned in her memory. Her father had known about this boy, perhaps even trusted him. They walked until dusk painted the sky in shades of fire. At last, the trees thinned and Clara saw it. Ashbourne, or what was left of it. The town lay in ruins, its stone buildings crumbling, its streets swallowed by weeds. Windows gaped empty like the eyes of skulls. Yet in the center, rising stubbornly against decay, stood a bell tower, its iron bell cracked but still hanging. The boy's voice dropped. This is where the circle was born. Clara's chest tightened. The air felt heavier here, as though centuries of secrets weighed upon it. And this is where my father wanted me to go? The boy nodded, because Ashbourne holds what he tried to protect, and what Elijah Thorne still hunts. At the name, Clara's stomach nodded. She had seen in her father's notebook, circled in red, marked as a betrayer. "Is he here?" she asked quietly. The boy's eyes flicked toward the tower. "If not, his shadow is. Either way, we won't be safe long." As they stepped into the ruins, the silence pressed closer, denser, until Clara felt as if the world itself was holding its breath. Her father's words echoed through her mind. Better she hate me than fall into their grasp. She had no hatred left, only fire. Her voice was a whisper, but it carried in the still air. "If my father stood here once, then so will I." The boy's gaze lingered on her, his expression a mix of caution and respect. Then, with one final glance at the bell tower looming above them, he said, "Then prepare yourself." Ashbourne does not reveal its secrets gently. The ruined streets of Ashbourne echoed with Clara's footsteps, each one heavier than the last. The boy walked at her side, his staff tapping against broken cobblestones. Above them, the bell tower loomed, its cracked bell swaying slightly though no wind stirred. At the tower's base, an iron door stood ajar. Symbols had been carved into the stone arch around it. The same circle and eye she had seen in her father's notebook. Clara felt a chill ripple through her bones. Inside, the air was colder, as if the stones themselves had never warmed in centuries. Spiral stairs climbed into shadow, and carved along the wall were fragments of names. Hundreds of them, some half erased, some etched deep. The boy ran his fingers over the carvings. The circle etched every oath here, every soul bound to their cause. He paused, his voice soft. "Your father's name may be here, too." Clara swallowed, her throat tight. They climbed, the silence pressing harder with every step, until they reached the chamber at the top. There, in the dim light, stood a figure. His back was to them, shoulders broad, posture straight as iron. When he turned, Clara's breath left her in a rush. The man was older, his hair streaked with gray. But his eyes, those were the same eyes that had once read her stories by the fire, the same eyes she had dreamt of every night since his disappearance. "Father," she whispered. His lips curved, but sorrow weighed his smile. "Clara." For a heartbeat, all the years between them vanished. She wanted to run into his arms, to hold him, to cry. But something stopped her. A shadow lingered in his eyes, a burden carved deep into his face. "You shouldn't have come," he said softly. "Ashbourne is not for you." Her heart broke at the distance in his tone. "You left me," she choked out. "All these years, I thought you were dead. I left because I had to." His voice trembled. "The circle hunts the key, and I am bound by oath to guard it. If they had known about you—" He shook his head, eyes burning. "You were safer hating me than following me." Clara stepped forward, tears stinging her eyes. "But I did follow you, and now I know. You're not alone anymore." Before he could answer, a low laugh cut through the chamber. From the shadows stepped another figure, a man tall, sharp-eyed, his presence filling the room like poison. "Elijah Thorne." Clara's father spat, his hand tightening into a fist. The betrayer's smile was thin and cruel. "After all these years, still playing a guardian, and now your daughter joins you. How poetic." Clara's father moved to shield her. "Stay behind me." But Clara's hand shot out, gripping the satchel. She pulled free the notebook, holding it to her chest. "This is what you want, isn't it?" she said to Elijah, her voice shaking but strong. Elijah's eyes gleamed. "The book is only the path. The key is what matters." His gaze shifted to her father. "And you, old friend, can no longer keep it hidden." The boy lifted his staff, its carvings glowing faintly. "You won't touch it," he said, his voice firm, far older than his years. The chamber shook, dust falling from the ceiling. The cracked bell above groaned, as though the tower itself bore witness. And in that moment, Clara understood. The silence her father had spoken of, the silence she'd been told to trust, it wasn't emptiness. It was power. It was the voice between voices, the shield against darkness. She closed her eyes, clutching the notebook, and whispered, "Trust the silence." The room stilled. Elijah's smirk faltered. The boy's staff flared brighter. Her father's eyes widened, not with fear, but with recognition. And then, like the strike of a bell, the silence answered. A wave pulsed through the chamber, invisible yet heavy, knocking Elijah backward. His cry was swallowed by the hush, his figure dissolving into shadow until only dust remained. Clara opened her eyes. The silence lingered, calm now, resting like a guardian at her side. Her father sank to his knees, tears glistening. "You've done what I could not. You've turned silence into strength." Clara knelt before him, taking his hands. "No more running. Not for you. Not for me." The boy lowered his staff, the glow fading. "The circle is broken for now, but their hunger never dies." Clara nodded, her resolve firm. "Then we'll face them. Together." The cracked bell above groaned once more, as if sealing their vow. Outside, dawn broke over Ashbourne, and for the first time in years, Clara felt the weight of her father's absence lift, replaced not with answers, but with purpose. Her journey had only begun. Sparkles, thank you, dear learner, for walking with Clara through mystery, courage, and silence. Stories like this are more than entertainment. They are companions on your English journey, helping you feel, imagine, and speak with confidence. If this tale moved your heart even a little, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share with someone who also dreams of learning English through story. Your support means the world, and it helps us create more journeys like this one. And now, I leave you with one question to carry into the comments. Thought balloon, if you were Clara, would you have trusted the silence or run from it? I can't wait to hear your answers. Until next time, keep learning, keep believing, and remember, your voice in English is a gift. Goodbye for now, my friend. Crescent Moon Sparkles.